Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 10 o'clock partnership initiatives session and stream. Today we'll have two speakers, Pamela Toster and myself, Patrick Goggin. I'm with Extension Lakes and the Extension Lakes team. And to start things off, I want to let you know that Pamela has a few polls for us to take a look at, and you can find those polls by clicking on the polls button on your EventMobi platform. It'll be to the right next to the chat button. And please fill out those polls as Pamela's talk goes on. We're going to hold questions and answers to the end of Pamela's PowerPoint presentation. But you can please add those questions to the questions and answer tab on the right side of your EventMobi platform as well. So let me introduce Pamela. Pamela is a shoreline property owner herself, living with her family up in the Bayfield area, county area. Pamela is a statewide lake and watershed protection specialist and a lake biologist in 5 Northwest counties. She also leads the Healthy Lakes and Rivers team. So I am going to share my screen. And we're going to start off with a PowerPoint from Pamela about healthy watersheds, high quality waters, part 2, and the statewide planning effort around this initiative. Again, if you want to please fill out the polls Pamela has for you as we go through the PowerPoint, and also you can add your questions to the questions and answer tab, and we will address those after the PowerPoint commences. And I just want to confirm with Pamela and Madeline, you can see the Healthy Waters PowerPoint, and I'm going to start the slideshow if you can see it. Is that correct?
Yes, we can see it.
Cool beans. All right, so here we go with Pamela's PowerPoint.
Thank you for joining Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Waters, Part 2, Statewide Planning.
Sorry, try that again. Try this again. Be good to us.
Thank you for joining Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Waters, Part 2, Statewide Planning. This is a virtual presentation on a current effort to develop a water resources protection program in Wisconsin. I hope you had the opportunity to watch Part 1, Modeling and Assessment, that Aaron, Marty, and Luke Beringer previously shared. Their Part 1 presentation delves more into the technical aspects of Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Water. Before I get started, I would like to give a shout out to our awesome WDNR superpowered Healthy Waters team. We've been working on this effort for several years. Those are the folks on the top left of the screen. And I'd also like to express our gratitude for the other department staff, consulting, federal, other state agency, and nonprofit conservation organization partners. These folks have lended their expertise, technical assistance, and overall guidance to us along the way. An overview of what I'll be sharing today is a background on the wonderful waters of Wisconsin and what they provide us. I'll share what other states are doing and our current definitions. And then I'll do a quick recap on the data-driven Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Waters concept. I'll also talk about our kickoff strategy and forthcoming action plan and share a couple example applications of how the information could be used. And then I'll close with the engagement process, how you can help us inform this effort and make it the best it can be. Before I get started, I wanted to share a few notes. The first is that this is a conceptual program initiative without any regulatory strings attached. Nor does it have dedicated funding. So we're really relying on programs and partners to voluntarily use this information to engage in water resources protection throughout the state. The second note is that our intent is not to stop development. Certainly there are places like state parks and national forest lands where development has been limited. We are as interested in learning from places where development has happened in ways that the water body or watershed has not been harmed. On the bottom right is an example of lake-friendly development. These people are caring for their property in a way that also cares for the lake. The third and final note I want to share is that this is a protection emphasis program, which means we're not going to be focusing a lot on water bodies or areas of the state that are in need of restoration. That being said, there will often be sort of smaller restoration opportunities within even protection-based watersheds and high-quality waters. The example on the top right is some students who got involved in some runoff control work on a lake in northern Wisconsin. This photo was taken by Jeff Williams, a NASA astronaut who actually hails from Winter, Wisconsin, the star on the screen here. And he took it from the International Space Station. I looked at this several years ago and I was just totally fascinated. And now it's kind of interesting to think, what if someday we can capture images like this from Perseverance on Mars? The point of this, though, is that Wisconsin is extremely water rich. We are blessed with tremendous water resources, lakes, rivers, streams, wetlands in this state. And obviously, some of those water resources carry over into the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest as a whole. It's remarkable to think you can look back at planet Earth from space and essentially see all of Wisconsin's water. And it's not like that in other places. So this water holds a lot of value for us. That value is reflected in the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources mission statement. I've highlighted here the protect piece. Part of our mission is to protect our natural resources, including our air, land, and water, our wildlife, fish, and forests, and the ecosystems. You could substitute that word with watersheds that sustain all life for all people to enjoy. Our specific DNR water resource program plays a lead role in fulfilling this mission when it comes to our state waters. So what do these wonderful waters of Wisconsin mean to us? There's been quite a bit of social science research completed throughout the country and in Wisconsin that we can look to inform our efforts and better understand public opinion and also the economic value of these resources. The information in the green font is from the language of conservation. 87% of people nationally say it's very important to protect drinking water. 68% say it's very important to protect streams and rivers from runoff pollution. There's widespread and increasing agreement that land protection will prevent pollution. Alongside that, there's increasing concern that fish and wildlife populations and the habitat they depend on are declining. When we look to work done in Wisconsin, that's the info I'll share in the blue font. This was recently completed by the Nature Conservancy. 83% of Wisconsinites say it's very or extremely important to protect fish and wildlife habitat. Our DNR social scientists have dug into outdoor recreation and what it means to people in the state and also people who come to Wisconsin to recreate. Assuring clean air and water in Wisconsin is the top outdoor recreation concern. Related to that, and more recently, the Department of Tourism's Office of Outdoor Recreation commissioned an economic study of the values of outdoor recreation. A major outcome of that is that the outdoor recreation gross domestic product rate grew almost twice as fast as the total GDP growth rate. Important to note here is that this work was done from, or this statistic is from 2012 to 2017. You could look at 2020 and the COVID and not have to look far to see people flocking to lakes, rivers, state parks, trails. They were getting outside and they were using Wisconsin's wonderful waters and landscapes to exercise, to de-stress, and to safely enjoy time with family and friends. And I'm sure as a result, it would be safe to say that outdoor recreation GDP rate probably was higher than total GDP during COVID. All that put together, the wonderful waters of Wisconsin, just the physical richness of waters on the landscape, and our strong interest and expectation that these waters will remain a way of life and that we will be able to use them and enjoy them, has had us asking ourselves what we can do to better protect water resources in Wisconsin. Hence, the Healthy Watershed, High Quality Waters concept. One of the first things our team did is we investigated what other states are doing, and we were assisted by a simultaneous study that was going on via the Environmental Law Institute nationally. They had been commissioned to research water resource protection efforts at statewide scales throughout the country. We learned from other states, we dug into their definitions, we perhaps naively thought we could almost pick up projects elsewhere from other states and refine them for Wisconsin purposes. We quickly discovered, though, that statewide water resources protections are few and far between, and in fact, we have pretty strong reason to believe that Wisconsin may be the first state to actually develop a statewide protection program. We've worked closely with EPA along the way, who have essentially corroborated what we discovered through our research process. We also looked into how other states are defining healthy and high quality, and thanks to that Environmental Law Institute work, we know only about a quarter of the states in the country have actually defined healthy or high quality waters. Most often those definitions are directly tied to regulatory programs, specifically wastewater discharges, but they're highly variable between the states that do have definitions. It ranges from no known impact or unmonitored, so the benefit of the doubt is it's healthy water unless they know otherwise, to places like West Virginia, where a lake essentially has to be entirely surrounded by permanently protected public land to be considered high quality. So we had not as much information as we had hoped to work with here, but we certainly had some great examples of statewide efforts, localized efforts, and some definitions. From that investigative process, we landed on these two definitions. Healthy watersheds, this definition is essentially a repurposed version adapted from the EPA. A land area draining to a stream, lake, or wetland where natural land cover supports the dynamic processes, habitat size and connectivity, and water quality conditions able to support healthy biological communities. The high quality waters definition we came up with was a little more difficult to pin down. Essentially, a preponderance of evidence needs to show that the water is high quality. Our evidence-based information is whether it's a unique or rare resource, is it attaining state water quality standards, does it have good to excellent biotic integrity. If it hits 2 of 3 of those things, it's considered a high quality water for lakes, streams, and rivers. Since wetlands are not assessed for state water quality standard purposes, we've decided that if it's a unique wetland or a wetland with good and excellent biotic integrity, it is a high quality water. So with those definitions, we were able to dive deep into a data-rich planet and state of Wisconsin. This data mining took several months, and I'm not going to go deep into the data because Aaron and Luke covered that, but essentially healthy watersheds are modeled based on 27 sub-indicators that could land in one of 6 bins. They are listed here, and those are those key components of what makes a healthy watershed. And on the high quality water side, the data are from directly monitored lakes, streams, rivers, and wetlands. And it's using existing data sets within the state. So if we know a water body is a unique or rare resource, for example, a trout stream, wild rice water, state natural area water. We know if it's attaining water quality standards, and we also know if it has good to excellent biotic integrity. We've pooled all those data sets together to identify high quality waters. This is a bit of a work in progress. Our first iteration of the high quality waters determination resulted in about 2,000 water bodies in the state showing up on that list. So to put it in perspective, again, we know there's over 15,000 lakes, 84,000 miles of streams and rivers. We think we did a pretty good job accurately sort of identifying the best of the best. On the right side is a conceptual diagram of what this would look like for application purposes. You can see the light blue watershed is highlighted. This is a HUC 12, so it could be anywhere from a 50 to 60 square mile land area that has been modeled as being healthy. And then within that healthy watershed, we have identified the high quality waters that would have appeared on our list. So in this case, there's 1 lake, 3 wetlands, and a stream. Another conceptual image of the results, we have done about 6 iterations of the healthy watershed modeling, and that too is a work in progress. On the left, we have the statewide conceptual results for healthy watersheds. The darker the blue, the healthier. And those yellow areas are the least healthy, so those would not be priority areas for this program. We heard loud and clear from our colleagues on our team, and we've heard since then from external partners that this should be a statewide effort, and there was some concern about protecting the best of what remains in the southern part of the state, for example. So we've decided that we will provide a second sorting option, and that sorting option would be by major drainage basin. On the right-hand side, you can see this is the Fox River major drainage basin. The model forces an identification of the healthiest watersheds relative to this specific drainage basin, and then it also will show the least healthy. So the idea here is if you were in a part of the state that maybe statewide isn't showing a lot of healthy watersheds, you could sort by that major drainage basin and be able to determine which watersheds are modeled to be the healthiest. Another important aspect of the watershed modeling is that it's a screening tool. So we can identify priorities, priority areas, sort of at statewide or basin scale. But again, it's a screening tool based on modeled information. Sometimes it will be necessary to verify on the ground with monitoring that the model is showcasing accurate results. So what I just shared was this Watershed Health Blue Bubble. This model we're using also provides an opportunity to integrate threats. So you could overlay areas that might be healthy with areas that are threatened. Historically, this sort of intersection of healthiness and threats or vulnerability has been where people have prioritized their work. The model has a new feature, relatively new, sort of in a watershed management sense, where you can also add opportunities. So things like existing plans, local capacity, maybe there's some alternative funding in that area. So these three things combined kind of hit the sweet spot in the Venn diagram, which you folks have seen before, where maybe where the healthiest watersheds that are the most threatened with the most opportunities, perhaps that would be a priority area for funding, staff dedication, planning projects, etc. We have not officially decided that yet. That is part of the feedback we would like to collect from partners during our engagement process, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Another important note is that the watershed health results in the model will be fairly solid, not delivered in a way that partners can necessarily adapt or change them, but the threats and opportunities will certainly be able to be flexible enough that a model user could go on to the EPA's public website and be able to change this, and you might be able to add your own localized threats and opportunities. We are at the statewide scale certainly are not familiar with all the threats and opportunities that might exist when you hone down to these individual watershed scales. Our kickoff strategy is about to be launched. The purpose of the kickoff strategy is to give folks a big picture view of what we've been up to and where we'd like to go. It is intended to be a tool for partners to review. It's only about 10 pages long, and kind of start thinking about water resource protection and what a program might look like in Wisconsin. A few points I want to highlight here is, again, the intent is to continue to support healthy ecosystems, biodiversity, and recreational use. This continue is highlighted because our intent is not to restore areas that have major challenges or pollution problems. The objectives are pretty simple. We want to establish clear goals and objectives and measures of success. We would love your help with that. And we would like to develop a 5-year action plan that's developed with other programs and partners with 4 key sub-objectives. We're focusing on technical assistance, funding, existing program tools, those could be the departments, it might be partner program tools, and external awareness and outreach. I'm going to walk through a couple example applications of how the results and the future action plan, which will be developed after our engagement process, could potentially be used, provided the feedback during our engagement process is positive of where we think this might go. The first application is a watershed scale management strategy, and this work, for those of you from Minnesota, or if there's any Minnesota professionals on the call, would probably look familiar. This is how Minnesota is managing their protection projects. The first option is vigilance. If the watershed already has substantial permanent land protection, just stay on top of that. Recognize that permanently protected land, what may seem like it, for example, county forests, even state land, sometimes does get sold. There are also multiple uses in some of those land areas. So for example, industrial forests may have a conservation easement. It's still going to be important to stay on top of the forestry best management practices. Maybe you want to consider being on a volunteer monitoring crew that verifies those are being implemented properly. The second management strategy is protection. This is where there's still substantial natural land cover, but it's not permanently protected. And here, obviously, the focus might be getting some permanent protection. And again, that doesn't mean stopping development. It might be things like cluster subdivisions, conservation easements on existing developed lands with large parcels. The third option is enhancement, where there's limited natural land cover, but restoration is possible. So there you may want to focus on restoring, small-scale restoration within the watershed. And then the fourth is restoration. And we are simply saying that if it's a restoration-based watershed, it's probably not a good fit for this program. So in the example I'm going to share next, protection will be the theme. So we will assume there's substantial land cover here, but it's not permanently protected. So the second step is kind of thinking through management actions, and this is certainly a simplified and quick approach for presentation purposes. It gets more complicated in real life, and I understand that. The first thing though, let's say we have a large tract of forest here that's undeveloped. You might want to work with local partners to permanently protect this. People often think you need to protect shoreline property first, which certainly has merit, but sometimes actually at a watershed scale, these parcels are less expensive and they actually may provide more long-term benefit to the resource. Let's say this area up above, this lake and stream, was recently identified as an impaired water. That would be an opportunity there to implement best practices to restore those impaired waters within the watershed, especially because in this case it could be draining or is draining to this high quality stream. These light areas on the map that aren't highlighted, these lakes, have not been monitored before, and neither has this other tributary stream. That would be another management action, to monitor in areas where we don't know what's going on to better understand the condition of those waters. So those were just a couple example applications to get you thinking how this might look. And I've shared that we have our kickoff strategy almost ready for launch. We would like to hear from folks. We intend to reach out to key partners to join us on focus groups to talk through some of these goals, objectives, the threats, the opportunities, but most importantly, the actions that we can focus on to prioritize protection in certain areas. From those focus groups, we plan to develop a 5-year action plan. Hopefully that will be ready by the end of 2021 and ready to implement in 2022. So what does the engagement process look like during COVID? Especially, our current plan is we will set up a website. We plan to work closely with our media. We will have a Gov delivery outreach process, and probably the key engagement piece here will be virtual focus groups. These are the types of questions we plan to ask. Hopefully, people who participate in those focus groups will have the kickoff strategy in hand beforehand and be able to sort of marinate on the questions we might ask and offer some great discussion and feedback during this process. I really appreciate your time today and effort to learn more about Healthy Watersheds, high quality waters. If you have any questions, you can always contact me, Erin, or Luke. I would also like to express my gratitude to Erin and Luke for their Part 1 presentation and also the tremendous assistance they have provided throughout the last couple years. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Pamela. Maybe do you want to check out your polls or see what's in the Q&A section? What would you like to do? And you're still muted. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Whatever works best for you, Patrick, works for me.
Okay. And I have to say, I'm sorry for the Russell Wilson thing there with my email. I'm going to shut my email off right now.
Oh, I didn't see Russell Wilson.
Okay. Well, good. But why don't we check the polls out and see what folks' responses to that were. So let me just pull up your first one. And the question was, rate your familiarity. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong one there.
While you're doing that, I'll mention that that was a pre-recorded session. Thanks to Patrick for running it. It's a new tool here, but that PowerPoint will be on our DNR website soon as we move towards this engagement process for others to review who might not be participating in Water Week or maybe don't know how to find it when the Water Week presentations are posted.
So hopefully you're seeing your first poll there. What do you think is the #1 stressor threatening water resource health in Wisconsin? Climate change, 13%. Looks like urban and agricultural land use in the watershed. B was your high. Shoreline development is certainly a pressure at 26%. AIS at 11%, and other in the 5% mode.
Okay, good. Thank you. If the folks who are on who hit other want to put what they were thinking in the Q&A, that would be really helpful.
Let's see what your second poll had. Did that load up? Are you guys seeing that?
Yep.
Good. Go ahead, Pamela.
Oh, you want me to read it? Okay. What do you think is the best opportunity we have to protect water resources in Wisconsin? Partnerships is the highest with 45%, and that fits perfectly in Wisconsin with the Wisconsin Lake Partnership and other partnerships we've got going. And then second is political will at 24%. And we have innovation and funding tied at 13%. And again, 2 people said other. So it would be interesting to hear what the others might be thinking there. Thank you for taking this poll. These are the types of things we want to dig into when we move forward through our engagement process, because we want to be sure we're identifying actions that fit with our strengths. This one's funny. Okay, if you ruled Wisconsin, how would you prioritize watershed and water body protection? More people said other on this, which makes total sense because this is the type of question you really have to think through, and there's a lot of options. But the #1 answer at 47% is I would prioritize the healthiest resources with the most threats and opportunities. So that's that sweet spot in the middle of the Venn diagram. And then we had 18% who said I would prioritize the healthiest with the most opportunities, which is a great response too. And then it looks like we're tied on prioritizing the healthiest resource regardless of threats and the healthiest and most threatened. So these are the things our team has been thinking through for several years, and we have kind of treaded different ways on this, and we've essentially decided that this is what we'd like to learn from partners instead of our internal group identifying the priorities, to work with people like you and land trust, counties, wildlife groups, and other DNR programs to help us refine those priorities. So you're the first official poll takers. Thank you very much. And we'll keep that information and include it sort of in our documents and information as we move through this engagement process.
So there's a number of questions for you, Pamela. In the Venn diagram, have you thought about prioritizing at the intersection areas of unique ecological value?
So prioritizing that unique ecological value over the other things in the Venn diagram? I don't totally understand.
Yeah, so in parentheses, they have many of those should be state natural areas, for example, but not all.
Okay, so that is a great question. Within our high quality waters identification, we included things like state natural areas. So the unique and rare resources are, I'm going to list some of them off, I won't get them all, but trout waters, Cisco lakes, wild rice waters, state natural areas, the water bodies affiliated with those, unique and rare wetlands. So those have already been integrated into our high quality waters prioritization process. So they're built into that watershed health bubble at the top. We could look more to doing something like that. It kind of depends what partners and programs are most interested in using this information into the future.
And another question is, who is carrying out the monitoring? Is it mostly community partners or DNR staff?
It is everybody. We use the citizen lake monitoring data, for example, goes into swims and is used in our assessment work. So we rely heavily on volunteer monitoring. Other partners like counties, and there might be consulting partners collecting information that is also built into those databases that we use. As far as future verification monitoring, we have not yet officially decided how that would look or how it would work. I think that too would likely be a combination of department staff, partners, and volunteers. Good question.
Two more. Will the modeling results be accessible to the general public? For example, could the ecological index score layer be posted up on the DNR's GIS open data portal?
Yes. So the watershed health score is in our script, so that the results of that will be available, but the actual ability to change the script and what went into those results probably won't be publicly available. And then the whole tool as a whole, we plan to have on an interactive database where you can toggle in and out, sort of add your threats and opportunities, and maybe, you know, do those percentile ranks to see how things are shaking out. So that will be a final product. We're holding off on actually displaying that until we're through the engagement process and the action plan is ready.
And then two points about your focus group process. One person just hopes that you'll make those well publicized and broaden it to, you know, water action volunteers and potential interest groups. But the question related to focus groups is, are focus groups done by external groups or the DNR, and what efforts will be made to reach all communities?
So we've been talking about these focus groups for several years. We originally were being advised by Jordan Pachenik, who's a DNR social scientist who has since retired, and more recently we've engaged with Drew Watermolen and Bob Holzman, who are social scientists. We have identified sort of key partner groups, some of them I listed off before, that we will probably reach out to directly, but we will also have some open public invitation groups in case we've missed anybody. We certainly don't want to miss anybody. As far as who will run the focus groups, it's not going to be me or another team member. It'll be somebody who has professional facilitation skills and background with focus groups. We're not exactly sure who that will be. We have sort of a suite of people that are being considered. That's a good question too. All these questions are excellent.
Cool beans. Well, thank you for those answers and for your presentation, Pamela.